Well, hello. Let me just adjust my camera a little bit. Okay. Well, hello, everyone. It's your girl, Gabrielle. Welcome to a brand new episode of Hot Topics. Let me tell you, for those of you who are new to the show or maybe you need a reminder, let me tell you what this show is about. So, this is a show where we like to have the real talk about real things. Particularly, we tend to focus on things when it comes to health, education, entrepreneurship, self care, all that good stuff, right? So, today, I am excited about today. I know I'm excited in like every episode, but I am excited today because not only do I have a repeat topic, I have a repeat guest. So I'm so excited. So let me tell you what that repeat topic is. The repeat topic is education reform. So this is part two. So we are continuing the discussion about education reform. I am excited about continuing this discussion on that. And my guest, who has returned to the hot seat, her name is Allison Maynard. And let me tell you, let me just remind you that she was a former school teacher with 17 years in the classroom. And after watching all the craziness and the pandemonium that's in the school system, she decided to leave that to start her own business called SchoolSmart, which is a simple program designed to teach parents how to help their kids get better grades in school. All right. So, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring her to the stage. Hi, Allison. How you doing today?
Hi there. I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, good. So thank you for returning to Hot Topics, for returning to the hot seat. So we are just going to get right into it. So, education reform, this is one of your platforms. So, I definitely want to hear your take on it. So please take it away.
Okay. I think we can all agree that what is happening in today's school system is not working at all. We have teachers leaving the classroom at astronomical rates. Retention rates are at the lowest that they've been in decades. They may be the worst ever. You've got behavior issues in the classroom. You've got so many issues after COVID. It's interesting. There were all these issues in the classroom before, and then COVID hit, and COVID just kind of brought them all to the forefront. And at that point, because parents were in the classroom because they were at home watching what was going on, couldn't hide anything anymore. How do we change this though? How do you fix a broken system? And it's all the system at this current point in time, it's all based on the Common Core standards. It's everything that we do in today's public schools is all about the testing. And so I know in my school district, we had to give certain benchmarks a few times a year. And we had a pacing guide. And we had all of these stories and all of these standards that we were supposed to teach. And then we would have this benchmark test to see how the kids were doing. And then we would just keep going and going and going. And then at the end of the year, we would have the big end of the year test that was for the state and for the government. And what I found was we had this pacing guide that was full of all of these standards that we had to teach. And if you don't know what a standard is, an example might be students will be able to identify an example of figurative language in the story. Figurative language being like a simile or a metaphor, okay? We had dozens and dozens and dozens of those. And we had so many things we had to teach that there wasn't enough time to allow that information to really sink into the kids. We would do a story and we'd have 2 or 3 standards that we would have to teach. And then we'd have to move on right away so we could hit all of the standards. And so the kids might show very quickly that they knew it, but if we didn't do it a few times, they would forget about it. So we would get to the benchmark, they would do okay on the benchmark, and then we would keep going, but we wouldn't refer back to what we had really taught before. So, a lot of it was we were teaching to the tests. And so that's what a lot of schools are doing, because in order to get funding, funding is based off two things. It's based off of the attendance, how often students are showing up to school, and it's based on performance on these tests. And those standards, what's interesting about those standards that were rolled out for the entire nation, and let me give a little bit of history about Common Core and what the idea was behind Common Core. I believe it was rolled out in 2009. And the whole point was to get every state on board teaching the same set of standards, because before it was up to the states, like, what are we going to teach our kids? What do they need to know by the time they move on to each grade and they graduate high school? So they decided, no, we need all of the states to use the same standards, which makes sense when you want to compare how people are doing in different areas, different demographics. Okay, that makes sense. But in order to do that, they had to come up with committees and groups of people to write the standards. And if you try to do research on who wrote the Common Core standards, it's really hard to find much information. From what I've been able to gather, it was mainly people from testing companies, some nonprofit organizations, people at universities. There were a few classroom teachers, but for the most part, the standards did not get very much input from teachers in the classroom, teachers who were on the ground working with the kids, who understand childhood development, who understand where kids should be at, who understand how kids learn. You've got a bunch of people who either have been removed from the classroom for many, many years, or who've never actually been in a classroom at all. So they're just kind of coming up with what they think it should look like. So in order to really reform education, honestly, we should just get rid of the Common Core standards. We'll start there. We would need to give autonomy back to the classroom teachers. I think one of the reasons that so many classroom teachers are actually leaving the classroom is they're not allowed to do what they're in the classroom to do. They're being micromanaged. You have to teach this story at this time by this date, and then move on to the next thing. Even if you have a bunch of kids who are behind or who don't understand the concept, even though we're supposed to differentiate instruction and make sure no child is left behind. I just lost my train of thought on that. I totally just, I was on a roll, and then it just.
You're saying get rid of the Common Core.
Yeah, we need to get rid of it. We need to give autonomy back to the teachers. We need to let them teach what they feel is appropriate. Like, I didn't follow the pacing guide. I would teach the standards, but I didn't use the textbook as much as I was supposed to, because I thought a lot of the information in there was boring. It was dry. The kids didn't like it. Sometimes it was way above their understanding. Like in my 8th grade textbook, the very first story was like 28 pages. So I'm like, I'm supposed to assign a 28-page story to kids who I know have not read a word all summer. Like, it didn't make any sense. And so I started teaching the school year using advertisements. And then we would use news articles that were really short and concise, because I had to teach them where they were at. That's what I was trained to do. That's what I spent all of my time in school learning how to do, was to figure out how to make things accessible for kids. And so that's what I would do. So we need to give the autonomy back to the teachers. The entire school system, it's based on, an 1800s agrarian society. Like, we haven't changed what schooling looks like since its inception. Things have changed a lot since the 1800s and 1900s. Things have changed a lot just in the last 20 years since we hit 2000. So, we're not keeping up with the technology. I mean, some schools are, they're trying to be like, we offer STEM and we do this and we do that. So they're trying to make it work. But overall, the entire system just needs, if it were up to me, we would just completely start over from scratch. But if we were to take today's system and try to fix something, I think the first thing would be to get rid of Common Core, or instead of having people from testing companies and people who haven't been in the classroom, we need to get actual classroom teachers involved in the process of developing these standards. And we need to incorporate fewer tasks. So there's a better time, there's more time for kids to master and understand things. And then you can differentiate. Like if you have kids who get concepts quickly, then you can up level it. If you have kids who are falling behind, then you can spend more time working with those individual students. But I didn't have a lot of time to work with individual students. I would have classes of 25 to 30 kids, 45 minutes. I'd have to, take attendance. I'd have to do the lesson. I'd have to collect the homework. I was also managing all kinds of behaviors. If kids came in crying or had situations at home, that was always a priority. Like we didn't have time. Like, they say, just teach. And if I knew every child was coming into my classroom, with two parents at home, I knew they slept well. I knew they had access to an area to do homework. They had decent food to eat. They didn't have emotional trauma. Sure, I could teach whatever, whenever, and it would be fast and easy and I wouldn't have any issues. But that's not the reality of the world we live in today. You don't know what those kids are walking through the door with. So Common Core is not really even logical. It doesn't make sense based on what our kids are walking in through the door with. Like how many kids are suffering with emotional trauma, especially after COVID? I mean, just look at all the behavior issues that we're hearing about in the news. Kids, as middle school kids, sometimes younger, physically attacking teachers because they don't like what they're being told. Like, what's going on there? That's partially a child problem. That's a parenting problem. So there's just so many different issues that go into this very complex issue. But if we're going to really if you want to take it for what it's worth and go, okay, we're going to take today's system, what do we fix? We start with Common Core. We either get rid of it completely or we completely revamp it, but with input from actual classroom teachers who know what's going on in the classroom.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I think you brought up a lot of different issues. You brought up the fact that, students have different learning styles and different personalities, so it's difficult to teach all those kids according to the same standards. And, the fact that, these standards were developed by, test makers and, the actual like teachers weren't involved in the process. So my thing with that is I'm just wondering, like, you're saying to eliminate it completely. So to push back against that, I'm trying to get my thoughts together. So if we eliminate the whole system, how would we how would we replace it? Because it's do you really have the time to address each individual needs of students? Because the fact is it is an 8 hour or 7 to 8 hour workday, and you may have 15, 20, 25, 30 students at a single time. So if you eliminate the Common Core, then what do you replace it with? Given that you still have to work within, the 7 hours of the workday, so and you don't really have the time to address each individual student's needs.
Well, schools were doing just fine without standards, 40, 50 years ago. They didn't have that. Like you went to school, you learned English, your teacher might, okay, we're going to read some Shakespeare. We're going to read The Great Gatsby. We're going to actually read and get into these novels, which you can't even do today because so many books are being banned nowadays. You have math teachers, they want to teach math. They don't want to teach math the Common Core way. Talk to most parents about Common Core math and they're going to be like, I don't understand it. I can't help my kids with it, which is another problem because if we want our parents to be involved in the process and then the kids come home with Common Core math and they don't know how to do it and the parents don't know how to support them, like no wonder our country is so far behind in math. What else? Teachers just used to teach. That's why we got into the profession, because we were imparting knowledge into our students based in our subject area. So if we got rid of Common Core, I don't see a problem with bringing in standards, but all of this testing, The testing is, it's time exhaustive. We would have a 3-week testing schedule where we would do block scheduling, which was great for me because my kids were testing. But then you had, history teachers, they were teaching, straight 2-3 hours because we were testing. And so it was exhausting. It was exhausting for the kids.
Yeah.
It was just constant testing. Plus we had all these benchmarks. And so again, all of that testing takes away from the actual time to teach the kids. And then by the time all the testing's done at the end of the year, at least in our district, there would be like 3 or 4 weeks left. There wasn't any energy. Everybody was on zero at that point. So, we would do the best we could to teach our kids a little bit more at the end of the year, but not a lot would happen because everybody was just so tired after all the testing. We need to get rid of standardized testing. There is no benefit to it. The only people it's benefiting are the testing companies who are making all of the money writing the tests. That's who's benefiting. And I believe a lot of the people who helped write Common Core standards work for those testing companies. So, there's just a lot of, there's just a lot of questionable activity happening. So, what's wrong with letting teachers teach their subject area? I don't see a problem with it. That's why they're hired. That's why we go to school. That's why we get teaching credentials, because we're taught how to teach our subject.
So now you bring up another controversial point, which is to eliminate standardized testing. So my thing with that is, how do you know that the student is understanding what you're teaching? Because even if you teach however you want to teach and you teach according to, how the student learns, how do you assess if the student understood what you're teaching them in the first place? How do you check that they even understand?
Well, I'm going to answer you with the question. How do we really know that the students are displaying knowledge with multiple choice tests? They can guess and okay, I'm just going to get, and they could still pass, they could do really well on standardized testing. Multiple choice is not a way to really gauge learning, because, a monkey could do really well because, they could just pick a letter and, they did great. So that's why we have a grading system. The way I would assess my students was, were they completing their work? That was a big part of it, because if they were completing their work, I knew they were getting the knowledge. And then I would have them actually write, for me personally, English, they would write things. Like I could tell if they wrote a paragraph, if they understood the concepts that I was trying to teach them. And I would also be able to tell if they understood how to compose a paragraph. So it would be based on standards that I have selected based on my training in, a collegiate program for teaching.
So if the issue is just multiple choice questions, why not just eliminate multiple choice and just do more short answer and long answer questions? Would that
they won't do shorthand or long answer questions? Who's going to grade them? Who's going to assess them? Because right now multiple choice can go through a machine. So there's and it's really, really fast. If we tested every child and we had to have somebody assess it, I don't think it would get done, because how many students do we have in America? I don't even know the numbers right now. So, those all have to be graded and assessed. And maybe at this point in time, there's AI programs that could, kind of pinpoint certain things like, okay, it looks like they have this, and this, but how accurate is AI? There is a human component that really does go into assessing a child to see if they're learning. Because it's not just about the learning. It's also about, the study skills and organization. It's about the mindfulness and emotional. It's about the child overall. Are they a good citizen in class? Do they have good work habits? It's a whole combination of things. When kids go to school, they're not just going to school to learn information, even though that's a big part of it. They're also going to school to learn how to interact with their peers, to work in groups, to, maybe learn how to work with people that they don't like. They have to learn how to be good citizens. So there's so many things that go into it. So the standardized testing, it's also only focusing on the learning component. It's not focusing on all the other things.
So then how So now the thing, if if you're teaching the student the way you want to do it, it's according to your personal standards, right? So let's say they move to the next grade, and then they have a different teacher who has a different style, right? So now they have to take whatever they learned and move it over to the next teacher who wants to do it her way, and then but her way might be different than your way. So I see what you're saying, and like let's individualize learning, but if we're also individualizing teaching, so how you teach one way and then they go to another student who teaches a different way, and it might be contradictory to the way that you're doing it. w- I could see why it's easy to just everybody teach one way.
Mm-hmm. I mean, when we get jobs when we're grown-ups, do we have bosses that have different ways that we have to change around to? Like, you have to learn how to adapt. Adaptability is a really important skill. So if you learn things and what's wrong with learning things in different ways? I don't think there's anything wrong with having to do things differently, because again, it shows that you're adaptable, and it shows that you're learning how to see the world from different perspectives, and you're learning how to think and act in different ways. I actually think that's a beautiful thing, and I think we need to see more of it, because what I'm seeing is that we're just churning out the same type of student. And the schools were created to create people who are obedient workers. We don't want critical thinkers. We want people who are going, we train children to sit in desks for 8 hours a day and to behave and blah, blah, blah. And then they go to work once they graduate college to do the exact same thing. Like, from the time they're 5 up until you retire at 65 or 67 or 72 or whenever.
And um that's an interesting point there. The last person I spoke to on this topic, he said that schools they're made to be like factories.
Mm-hmm.
So now to push back against that, and yeah, and just another thing came to me is another person I spoke to that said like schools are really supposed to teach kids about the workday. So it's structured for gearing them for the typical workday. So now if the school system is designed really to prepare kids for work, and it's more like a factory type of production, in your mind you should know that it's a factory type of production. So why not just go with the flow? Because that's kind of the point of public schools, right? Is to just churn kids out and just churn out workers. So if you know that already, why not just expect that?
I'm not I'm not understanding. What do you mean just expect that?
All right, let me rephrase the question. So if schools were designed really to prepare kids for the workday, and what you're doing is you're teaching kids your way, you're individualizing teaching, how will they prepare for the workday?
How well do we want everybody to be prepared for a typical workday? I mean, look at how unhappy everybody is in society today. You have people who don't even go outside. You can literally wake up in your house, go into your garage, get in your car, drive to work into the parking structure, and go sit in your office and then go home and do it 5 times a week. Mental health illness is skyrocketing, not just in children, but in adults as well. Adults are miserable and unhappy. With COVID and with the recession that's hitting right now, like, people are stressed about money and finances and everything. People are not happy. The system is not working. I mean, it's working for a very, very, very small group of people at the very top. We're all meant to work for them. Why can't we teach kids differently to get them different skills, so when they graduate, they can go, I don't want to sit in an office job from 8 to 5. I want to create my own way in the world. Or I want to gather a group of my friends and we're going to create something to make money in this world. Why can't we teach kids how to be independent thinkers so they can come up with the solutions to the problems of the world, make money, and make a difference in the world? Because if we keep up with this current system, we're just going to keep churning out workers who are just going to continue to be miserable until they retire. And by the time you retire and you have all the time, you can't do anything anymore because you're sick. Your body doesn't function in the same way. You're tired. I mean, I worked for 17 years in the classroom, and I didn't retire, I resigned, but I'm still recovering from that. And that was, we're in 2022 now. It was 2.5 years ago. And I still don't feel like I have fully recovered from my time in the classroom. So how is somebody who's going to spend all of their life working in an office job or whatever, 9 to 5, when they retire, they're not going to have, I'm not everybody, but there's going to be a lot of people who are just tired and want to sit at home and watch TV all day. Not everyone. Got to be careful there. But I get it. It's not everyone. Yeah. But so, we need to give kids opportunities.
So give them opportunities. So tell me your ideal school. So let's imagine. So if you could design a school, right? You have free reign, whatever you want to do. How would you design it?
Well, first of all, it would not be done by age. So we wouldn't have, so I taught 8th grade. And so those kids were like 12, 13 years old. We wouldn't divide kids by age. We would divide kids up by ability level. So you might have, a bunch of 11, 12, 13-year-olds in the same English class because that's where they're at. And you might have a bunch of 11, 12, 13-year-olds in a lower English class because that's where they're at. You're not going to have a class where you have all of these advanced kids, middle kids, low kids, because honestly, and I've read this, it happens in schools. The teachers are supposed to teach to the middle of the road kids, or the kids who are on the borderline of being able to jump up to bring up the test scores. It's all about testing. It's all about what those test scores are at the end of the year, because then the schools can say, look at our test scores, we were great. And then parents can say, oh, we want our kids to go to that school, because more bodies in a school means more money, because remember, schools get paid by attendance. So it all goes back to money. So we would have kids grouped by ability, not by grade level. And we would have different topics. Like, yes, we would have English and writing and math, and we'd have some science and history, absolutely. But then we would have things like how to be an entrepreneur, finances, like how to, pay taxes, how to have a credit card. Like, there's so little that's taught in schools for that. And that is such an important part of our adult life. Like, how much time do you spend a month looking at your finances, paying bills, paying your mortgage, all of that stuff? And we would have more to do with the arts, because the arts are so important to the emotional well-being of just people in general. Painting, singing, orchestra, drama, all those kinds of things. And it would be more than 1 or 2 class periods a week. It would be, because those are the things, if a kid loves those things, those are the things that they could find, figure out how to make a job out of it. So if you're spending all this time, if you love music and you're spending all this time in orchestra, maybe you can work for the Philharmonic, maybe not as one of the people playing, but maybe somebody doing lights in the background. There's a lot of things that go, jobs that go into these different industries. And so, but we don't have, the way it's set up, we don't have that know-how to teach kids that. Like, why aren't we spending more time doing this? If kids want to learn foreign languages, why are we waiting until high school to start teaching them foreign languages? And why are we forcing kids to learn foreign languages if they don't want to? Yes, it makes kids more well-rounded. I get that. But foreign language should actually be taught to kids when they're really young, like 3, 4, 5 years old, because that's when the brain is absorbing things. My girlfriend, her son is, I think he's going to turn 3 this year, and she's got him learning English, Korean, and Spanish. And he's going to remember that because he's really little, and it's the plasticity of the brain. This is the best time for them to learn and retain information. If you wait until 8th or 9th grade for kids to start learning a foreign language, I started taking Spanish when I was in 9th grade. I took it for 4 years in high school. I passed a college level exam at the end of my senior year of high school that said I was conversationally fluent. I currently live in Mexico, and I speak baby Spanish because I didn't start speaking it younger. So, we need to teach kids things. Also, we need to teach them at the appropriate time developmentally. So if we're going to teach them foreign language, it should be when they're way younger. So the whole system really just needs an overhaul. But my ideal school, we would definitely be teaching viability, and we would be teaching different things that would be more attractive to kids, but also be more beneficial to them when they're adults.
So the way that you're thinking is more fluid in that you're dismantling the grading system. So there would be no 6, 7, or 8. It would just be by abilities, and then then abilities according to what? Like, is it reading ability, math ability? Like, when you say ability, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, it depends on what subjects we're offering, but it would be reading ability. Like, it's really hard to teach when you have a kid who's an advanced reader and you have a kid who can barely read a sentence. It makes it really difficult to teach and to be equitable. So it would be based on reading ability. It would be based on, I know math teachers who are teaching algebra who have kids who don't even know their multiplication tables. Like, you need to know some basic math skills before you go up into the more advanced maths. So it would be based on the ability level of whatever subjects we were offering in the school. And, let's talk about grades for a minute. Like, how are kids assessed? Because I know that question's probably coming. And we have a grading system now, A, B, C, D, F. Is that really fair? Do we really need it? Are we as adults graded? When was the last time you got a report card?
15 years ago, back in college.
Exactly. We don't. Why do we have this expectation for kids and for college students that we don't have as an adults? There's a disconnect there. And then, I guess you could say performance reviews at work are like a grading system, but there's a disconnect there as well. So, I think the traditional grading system, and it's arbitrary. Like, an A to 1, again, an A to 1 person is a different grade to another. And I would give grades based on, I would assign an essay, and I would give, the grade that I would give the kids a rubric, and these are the expectations. And I would sometimes get parent complaints if the kids didn't earn an A, even if I had it specifically listed out. We've been brainwashed to think that everybody has to have all A's. And what was beginning to happen was that, and I've seen this, there's a Instagram page I follow. It's called Teacher Misery. And a lot of teachers, they submit anonymous things. And there's a lot of teachers who are like, I just give the kids all A's and B's because I don't have the time or the energy to deal with all the parents who are going to complain with me. How is that going to help the kids learn? How is that going to help the kids understand their strengths and weaknesses? We've also made everybody feel like everybody gets an A, everybody gets a trophy, everybody has to be the same, but the kids really aren't learning. Like, how can all these kids have these fantastic grades, but then they can barely read or write?
So it's sort of we created this expectation of you don't have to work hard. You don't have to motivate yourself. You don't have to. And I guess I will say I've seen it as well. Like, in the kids that I've tutored, I may say like, oh, it'd be cool if you did this little extra thing. And they'll be like, no, the teacher didn't ask for that. so, I agree with you there. Like, we are creating a generation of kids that are not motivated to take that extra step, and they're not motivated to go above and beyond. They're just doing the bare minimum because that's what's expected of them, and that's it. And it is sad to see, and we do need to change that. They're doing just the bare minimum just to get by, so teachers can do their job, and that's it. And it it I- it's a lot of different things. I think it's not just the Common Core. It's of all these other things that surround it, but it is the system, and the teachers are being weighed down by the system.
What was that last part? The internet cut out.
Yeah, I was saying that it's that we are creating a generation of kids that are not motivating themselves.
Well, and we have another problem that we haven't even talked about.
What's that? The phones.
The phones, the social media, everybody wants to be a Kardashian. Everybody wants to be an influencer. Everybody wants to be a TikTok star. Like, how often are you out in public now and you see all these kids doing all these like dancing, everybody. And it's so funny. Just last night, I was on my phone and I found this girl and she's got like the most viewed TikTok video ever. And I was like, about what? And I went and watched it and it was just her like doing this like silly little dance and it got like 200 million views. I'm like, she's not even doing anything. I mean, that's what's entertaining to our kids. And our kids are being kind of brainwashed too, thinking like, oh, I don't have to do anything. I can just go make some videos and I can become a star. And I mean, that's a whole nother issue is the fame monster and how everybody wants to be famous and rich and have all this attention and everything. But, we've got kids who are spending hours and hours and hours and hours on this thing. Like, it's so hard. I mean, the battles I would get into over cell phones in the classroom, you can't take my phone away from me, even though it was directly stated you cannot be on your phone in class unless it's for a class activity with my permission. I got parent complaints about taking phones away. You can't take my kid's phone away. Well, they broke the rule, but they need their phone. So, this whole thing is such a distraction and it's messing up kids' brains. Developmentally, kids are not adults until the prefrontal cortex of the brain is not fully developed until they're 25 years old. And I'm being told it's actually later now. What damage is this little device doing to our kids? Because they're just passively scrolling. They're not thinking about anything that they watch. They're just mindlessly watching it, going on to the next thing, going on to the next thing, going on to the next thing. And then they're also comparing themselves like, oh my gosh, I don't have all these clothes. I don't go on these vacations. I don't have this many followers. Nobody likes my posts. So it's also creating mental health issues. So not only do we have issues with the education system, but this is, a fairly new thing within the last 20 years or so, logically, with the smartphones and kids having access to them. I think the last statistic that I read said that 88%, I could be wrong on that number, but it was somewhere in the 80s that 13 to 18-year-olds had their own smartphone. Okay, adolescence is hard. Kids are comparing themselves. They're going through hormonal changes. Don't even get me started on all the toxins in the environment that are making us sick. So, you've got these kids who are sick because they're eating unhealthy food. They don't have the support they need at home. And then they're on their phones all day comparing themselves to everybody else. And we wonder why kids aren't doing well in school. We wonder why the school system is bad. It's not just the school system. And that's another thing. It's not just the school system. We have to take a look at equity. We have to take a look at poverty. We have to take a look at why do some neighborhoods, some schools are better because they're in rich neighborhoods, and property, at least in California, property taxes are what fund the schools. Well, yeah, of course, schools in Beverly Hills are going to be doing a lot better than schools, say in Garden Grove or Compton or Long Beach, even though there are schools that do really well in those areas because they get more money, they get more funding, they can pay their teachers more, and they can attract better quality teachers. And so, people don't have equal access to healthcare. So if you have a parent at home who's sick, who can't go get medical care, and all they can really do is lie around all day, do you really think that kid's going to have the same opportunities as somebody at home with two healthy parents? And the resources aren't there. So this isn't just a school system thing. I mean, we've got to reform, the medical system. We have to take a look at how our food is being developed and produced and how it's being shared. Like if you look at school lunches, I'm all for free lunches. But I used to watch the kids eat, and I actually have a little video series that I filmed. I've never done anything with this, but maybe now this is getting me thinking maybe I should. The kids filmed me trying some of their lunches. They were awful. They tasted bad. there was pizza day. It was greasy. They're supposed to have vegetables. They were not appetizing at all. Like, no wonder kids don't want to eat their vegetables, because what's in those school lunches is garbage. It's not nutritious at all. And so we're not giving our kids proper nutrition so they can study. So it's so
It's
many
a
different
whole
issues.
thing, yeah.
It's the whole entire system. It's not just the school system. We have to look at, how everything is functioning and interacting in our society as a whole. And when you take a look back, I think you have to say, like, wow, like, everything is failing. Like, we've got to revamp it all. But then that would require intervention from the government. And the government, do they really have their constituents' best interests at hand when you hear about them, getting paid by all these different lobbyists? And it's such a complicated mess.
So so I mean, these are just public schools that we're talking about. You still have private schools, you have religious schools, you have parochial schools, you have homeschooling. So what? So do you think the solution is, okay, if the issue comes down to money and government funding and taxes, should we privatize schools?
Oh, that's a whole nother beast. No, because when you start to privatize schools, like, who's funding it? Because then once you start getting in that funding, then there's, if you've got this company that's funding this school, they're going to want certain things taught in a certain way. If you've got this organization funding the school, they're going to want things taught in a certain way. So then there's a conflict of interest there, in my opinion. I think what we should do is give the parents the money for the education. I mean, don't actually literally hand it to them, but say, okay, you get this is what your child would get if they attended school. So you get to decide, like, do you want to homeschool? Okay, you're going to, that money, and we're going to check up on it. That money is meant for homeschool curriculum and, field trips or whatever. If you want to send them to private school, okay, that money is for you to send your kid to private school. If you wanted to send them to this type of school, and then that way parents have a choice. It's not just like, okay, you moved into the neighborhood, this is the school that you go to. But that's the way the system is set up now.
So every parent will get their own budget?
I think so. I think we need to allow parents more autonomy to make these decisions. Why have, and then here's another thing, like, back in the 70s, before the women's lib movement, mostly women, stayed home and, looked after the kids. And I'm not saying that women need to start doing that. Like, I'm all for women working. I don't want to be misconstrued there. But somebody was at home. Somebody was there, cooking nutritious meals. Somebody was there when they got home from school. Somebody was there to make sure they were doing their homework and to intervene if there were issues. Like, there's a lot of kids that don't have that anymore. The parents are working, and this, parents are working,
Yeah.
1-2 jobs. They're super tired at the end of the day. They don't get home till 8 or 9 o'clock at night. The kids maybe go to an after school program till 6, and then they go home and they're by themselves for a couple hours. So no, they're not really being looked after. Like, why not pay a parent to stay at home, be in charge of their learning, and make sure they're healthy and taken care of? But I'm sure that would be too radical and revolutionary. Like, oh my God, someone has to stay home. Like, I don't see that happening either. But I mean, in an ideal world, there would be a parent at home, because then they'd be able to supervise and intervene. And some of these issues, all these stupid TikTok challenges. I have a friend, I think she's in South Carolina. She posted on Facebook this week. There was shots fired at her school, and they did a whole evacuation. Everybody was freaking out. She said the SWAT team arrived. It was a TikTok challenge. Why is this happening? Because there's not direct parent supervision. Parents are not watching their kids and teaching them right from wrong and what they should be doing in a functional society. So these kids are doing all of this stuff thinking this is all so funny. Ha ha. We got we got to be out of school for a few hours, causing trauma in a lot of the kids, and especially the teachers. I mean, how many teachers are traumatized from all the school shootings that have happened? The first time we did an active school shooter drill at my school, I don't remember what year it was. I cried in my classroom. I'm like, I did not sign up for this when I became a teacher. So, we don't have parents that are teaching their kids how to be functional people. In part, I think sometimes because they don't know how, but in part because they're so busy being adults and trying to figure out how to, stay on top of their lives financially and whatnot.
And then those parents are probably the product of the school systems that they went through, and of course it's impacting future youth.
Exactly. It's a cycle. Everything is cyclical. What happens? We keep repeating the cycle until somebody stops and breaks it. That's how generational trauma works. Your family's going to suffer from generational trauma until you or whoever in your family decides, no, we're not going to do this anymore. And you heal yourself. And once you start doing the healing on yourself, then you can teach your kids how to heal themselves and how to be more functional. But, that's a really radical idea too.
Hmm. All right. So we got to start to wind things down. So now, is there any, because a lot of the things that you're saying really falls on the parents. I'm not sure if it really falls on the schools. So, because you're saying just everything needs to change. Everything needs to
I
change.
mean, and I know realistically that's not going to happen. But when you ask me what does my ideal look like, I think everything does need to change. And it's not just the schools that need to change. This is not just a school system problem. This is a problem. This is everything combined. This is, years and years and years of issues, compounding. And what's going to happen is something at some point is, everything's going to crack. Something's going to happen at some point. It hasn't happened yet, but I think we are getting closer, it's scary. But, what do? You do the best you can with what you have every day.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So, final words of wisdom. What would you like to impart on our audience?
Well, again, I think it's important for parents to be as involved in the process as humanly possible. I understand that there's a lot of different issues where parents may not be able to be involved, but I mean, something as simple as, making sure you're spending 5 or 10 minutes a day with your child, having a conversation, checking up on their homework, communicating with teachers. This kind of goes along with what we were talking about last week with empowering parents. It's up to you to be on the forefront of this. So if the more knowledge you have, the better decisions you can make about how to proceed with raising your kids. So I think it's all about, again, doing the best with what you have. So start with where you're at. And I think if you want to start where you're at, make sure you're as intimately involved with your children as possible, meaning talking to them, staying on top of what's going on in school. I think that's a really good place to start.
All right. Beautiful. Thank you for that advice. And let's get your contact information up there. All right, you guys. So, Allison Maynard, uh, just a website and an Instagram. So it's, it is easy to remember. So if you want to stay in touch with her to learn more about her and everything that she has to offer, you can visit her on the web. Her website is www.schoolsmart101.com. You could also check her out on Instagram. It's just schoolsmart101. So I encourage you to follow her on Instagram, check out her website, learn as much about her as you can and all this advice that she gave. For the parents watching, teachers, superintendents, anyone watching, I encourage you guys to implement all of this advice into the school system. But yes, so just for Allison, you can reach her on the web. It is www.schoolsmart101.com, and she is also on Instagram, schoolsmart101. That information is at the bottom of your screen right now for my video people. And for my audio people, I did not forget about you. All of this stuff is in the description. Allison, do you want to talk about your business?
Sure. So I have actually created an online program for parents to help them teach them to help their kids get better grades in school, because most parents want their kids to be successful. It's based on My 4 pillars of learning, which are study skills and organization, critical thinking and reading, writing, and mindfulness and emotional well-being. The belief being that if a student has a basic understanding of the 4 pillars, they will be able to go into any learning environment or classroom setting and be able to at least attempt to do what the teacher is asking them to do. And oftentimes they'll be able to do it without experiencing frustration. They'll understand what's being asked of them, etc. So I have an online course that takes parents through modules that, teaches them how to do this. And I also have a coaching component to this program where I go through the course with parents and with their kids. It's kind of like it's a whole group effort. And we go through the curriculum, and I work with the kids and with the parents, and I show the parents how it's done, and then the parents can take over. So then the parents know how to better support their kids, because I talk to a lot of parents who are like, we want to support our kids, we just don't know how. This is how you start. This is just going to be the first of a series of courses that I'm creating to help better support parents so they can help their kids be more successful in school and in life.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right, so that is fabulous, and I encourage you guys to take advantage of that. So, again, everything that she just said, go to the website to learn more. I will repeat it one more time, www.schoolsmart101.com. Follow her on Instagram. It is just schoolsmart101. All right, Allison, thank you so much for joining me once again. This was awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Great. All right, you guys, I'll place you backstage. All right, and it is just you and me. All right, you guys, we have reached the conclusion of our episode. Thank you so much for joining us today. So, however you are taking in this episode, whether it is on video or on audio, please check out our other episodes and don't forget to follow and subscribe. And while you're at it, please let us know what you thought about this episode by leaving a comment in the comment section below or in the comment thread. If you happen to be listening to this on audio, whether it's Spotify or Apple or a Spreaker, there's a few others, leave us a rating. Let us know what you thought about this episode. Drop a star, drop a word, whatever it is. Please give us a rating. And as a reminder, this production of Hot Topics is a production of A Step Ahead Tutoring Services. So if you would like to learn more about us, our company, all that we have to offer, maybe you're looking for a tutor right now. Are you looking for a tutor for your child? Are you looking for a tutor for yourself? Because we work with adults too. Please reach out to us. Our website is www.astepaheadtutoringservices.com. You could also check us out on our social media. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're in a lot of different places. Follow us on all of those things. Check us out. I will repeat the website again. I know you're like, oh, the websites, but I got to give out this information, you guys. The website again, www.astepaheadtutoringservices.com. And I also want to let you know that Hot Topics has a text list. I encourage you to get on that text list. You will learn about all of our upcoming episodes when we drop the audio. So anything and everything that is hot topics, stay in touch with us. To do that, just text a simple code, you guys. Just text the code Hot Topics. Text the code Hot Topics to 917-764-3975. Again, text the code Hot Topics to 917-764-3975. All right, you guys, and that is it for the show. Thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to seeing you at the next episode. And now I am signing off. Bye.